Good morning, everyone. So as introduced earlier, I am Mauricio Adelino. I'm a final year student at the University of Namibia, currently pursuing my bachelor's degree in veterinary medicine. I was born in Namibia, raised between Namibia and Angola. My roots stretch from Naulila to Ohangwena. Today I have something deeply personal to share with all of you, my student leadership journey and all the trauma surrounding it. But before we dive into my story, I have a few questions for the audience at large. Just by a show of hands, how many of you think leaders are born? How many of you think leaders are made? Fair enough. All opinions are respected. As for me, I firmly and wholeheartedly believe leaders are made. Situations, hardships, and experiences shape us and mold us into the leaders we become. Take a look at Nelson Mandela, for example. One can argue he wasn't born a leader, but he became one through decades of struggle against the apartheid system, including 27 years in prison. Those experiences shaped his vision, resilience, and ability to unite a divided nation. Our very own late Sam Nujoma, Namibia's first president, he did not inherit leadership, but became one through years of dedication to the liberation era. Those challenges shaped him into the leader he became to gain Namibia's independence. Now, perhaps some of you in the audience are thinking, these are all leaders from the liberation era. Fair point. But leadership does not end with independence. Even today, leaders are being made. Again, through hardships, challenges, activism. Wangari Maathai, an environmental activist from Kenya and Africa's very first woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Oh, what a wonderful woman. She founded the Green Belt movement, championed women empowerment and environmental sustainability. Her leadership wasn't born from inheritance, but rather from social action. Take our very own Professor Job Ampanda. Frustrated by land reforms, inequality, he carved his path through education, activism, and persistence. He wasn't born into power. He rose by challenging the system and amplifying the voices of the youth. I come from a family of 5 siblings. Being the only male, that position came with a lot of familial and cultural expectations. I was expected to be strong, capable, and composed. Love often felt conditional. I was expected to be an example, a pillar, and one that could not afford to show any signs of weakness. These early lessons prepared me for leadership in some ways, but also taught me how to suppress pain. It taught me how to carry my own burdens and believed that leadership meant to suffer in silence. I hated the idea of leadership. Yet somehow, I could not stay away from it. I grew up fascinated by leaders following the politics of the 90s into the 21st century, admiring the figures of the like of Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, Fidel Castro of Cuba, Barack Obama, and our very own Hifikepunye Pohamba, or rather Tatekulu Hifikepunye Pohamba, and many more. At a very young age, I took up my first leadership position, or rather can I say my first leadership gig, as head boy of my primary school. I did an okay job, but I was heavily criticized, not for the lack of effort, but for failing to acknowledge my flaws and for taking up more than I was supposed to do. By the time of high school, my fear for leadership had grown. I remember being the only individual in the room to vote against myself for the position of deputy head boy. I genuinely believed that there were those better suitable to handle the emotional and mental side effects of leadership. These patterns followed me into the University of Namibia. Having served as an advisor to student parliament, secretary for external affairs, vice president, speaker of all 12 UNAM campuses, amongst other leadership positions. Now, I'm sure there are some former student leaders sitting in the audience and thinking, how was that possible with our constitution? Just a side note, I'm part of the individuals that wrote the SRC constitution. So there were some loopholes in between. Leaders are expected to be strong, decisive, and unbreakable. But what happens when leadership in itself becomes the source of trauma? And this is where I want the audience at large to relate to my story. We are all leaders in our individual capacities, whether be it from a business point of view, back in your boardrooms, surprisingly, even at home. I have experienced it all, well, most of it. From the heartbreaks of losing elections, from the guilt of not fulfilling a manifesto, and from the daily expectation trying to please everyone. The most traumatic part of my leadership journey came in the year of 2021, where I served as Speaker of Parliament. There was a hostile incident that required institutional response. I did what I believe was right at the time and defended the institution's image. Then came the backlash. My phone would not stop buzzing. From WhatsApp status updates, from public posts, from messages such as, "You are a traitor, you are a tribalist, did you forget where you come from?" These were the very same individuals I had continuously represented. I remember walking into my mentor's office and asking him, "Is this what leadership really about? Are these the fine margins of errors in leadership?" To make matters worse, even my own council members had distanced themselves. I have never felt so alone and abandoned. The ripple effects of that incident eventually cost me an election. People rarely talk about what leadership truly demands. From the silent wars during council meetings and to the exhaustion that comes after giving your all and still falling short. The trauma builds up, not at once, but piece by piece. Today, I'm still passionate about leadership, perhaps more than ever, because when the impact outweighs the trauma, then the journey becomes worth it. And I'll say that again. When the impact outweighs the trauma, then the journey becomes worth it. I have learned to accept that pain is not an exception in leadership, but it is part of the journey. Whether it's from within or whether it's inflicted by others, it will always find its way towards you. I have learned to cope, not as a perfect leader, but as a wounded one, a growing one. The best lesson I have learned is how to forgive myself and to understand that leadership will never be easy. It is a path that finds us at times, and sometimes it is a path we choose, whether we are afraid or whether we are not ready. Most importantly, I have learned to be vulnerable, whether it's after losing an election or whether it's after falling short of a promise. I have learned that it is not weakness, but it is courage. It is strength in its most human form. Rewriting tomorrow is a theme that resonates with my story because we are rewriting tomorrow's leadership. To every young person out there, or to anyone really who dreams to lead, this is what I have to say. We do not need flawless leaders. We need honest leaders. Leaders that are not afraid to say, "I'm not okay." Leaders that will lead not in spite of their scars, but through their scars. Today, I have told my story. As Maya Angelou once said, there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. Thank you very much.